Hello friends, it's Miss Natalie. I am back with the last part of our landscape painting, which is the foreground. And you may notice that I extended the background so that it will definitely be behind the foreground because little bits of that are going to peek through. Just like when we look through trees at the sky, you see the sky peeking through. So the background will be peeking through the trees of the foreground. So I've got more of both of those greens, and I'm going to add a lot of water to them because this paint is not the best, and I apologize. If you can use different paint than the ones that we got, I would highly recommend it. I also picked up some white for highlights, and I'm going to use the dark blue for shadows. In fact, I'm going to start with a little bit of this blue mixed in with the green. And I'm going to start down here because these are the trees that are farthest away. And you know what? I'm using this brush, but I don't think that's the right brush for these trees. I think this one is the right brush for the trees. So, you know what? I'm going to lay these trees down and see how I feel. No, I really do think that's the wrong brush. So let me come back with my new brush and a little bit of blue. And I know you're like, wait, Miss Natalie, whatever you want to call me. Isn't it bluer when it gets behind? Sorry about that. Well, yes, it is, but also shadows. I could be using black or brown in my shadows, but because I want a good sense of unity throughout my whole piece, I'm using blue. So right now I'm just kind of laying down the shadows, kind of a sense of shadow for these trees here, and then I'm going to go back over that and kind of put the highlighted part of the tree. Sorry, I keep taking my piece with me. I should probably tape it down next time, huh? So laying down what's going to eventually be the shadows on my piece, and keep picking up more paint and laying it down. I think the other brush might have been okay. All right, and now I'm going to come back and put in more of the highlighted parts. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of white and add this. Since I'm not trying to make it a warm green, I want to keep it cool. Instead of adding yellow, I'm adding white. Remember, I've got my cool palette. So, see if I can, what happens? You know what? I might just not be feeling this. So I might be coming back with even lighter to try to get some of that in. There's highlights on the trees. And I have to tell you, conifer trees are not the trees that I do the most painting of. You're like, no dumb, as we can totally tell, your conifer trees are kind of rough. They are kind of rough here. I just gotta keep working at them until I figure out what's the right thing to do. Maybe it's the wrong brush, you know? Just because I've done this kind of painting a lot, and I have, doesn't mean that I know how to make everything with every paint and every, this is just not, this isn't working for me, and I'm gonna have to figure out why. I don't know if the paint is too thin. That could be an issue. It's a lot easier with thicker paint. This stuff kind of works because it's lumpy. You kind of have to work it a little bit like watercolor. And so that can be tricky. Maybe I do need to come in with some maybe I need I feel like I need a different kind of brush. I feel like I need like one of those flatter brushes that would give me more like bristles, and maybe do a dry brush. What if I just use this? Yeah, that's not quite right either. See, that's a lot of what art and painting is just trying things out, seeing what you can do. And, you know, sometimes we do have to use what we have. So maybe I come back in like that with some blue, try to figure out what I'm doing. Figure out how to make this work. It's all about making it work for you. I might pause this for a second and try to figure something else out. Okay, so I've been experimenting, and I realized that one of the things I was doing was trying to use a dry brush technique over wet paint with a wet brush, and that's just not going to work. I also realized that, yeah, I do need to bring a little yellow in. As long as I keep it very light, it shouldn't take too much away from my cool color scheme. After all, yellow is a component of green. So that's what I'm going to try to do, and I'm going to continue working on this middle ground, these trees in the middle ground, and maybe make them a little bit more impressionistic, doing kind of that sort of thing, bringing some in background. I was also kind of making just like rows of trees, just like one row of tree rather than one row of trees rather than multiple like layers of trees. And that's really what you have, is multiple layers of trees that kind of peek in and amongst each other. So kind of just laying down some shadows for different trees. Happy little trees. Now, if you want to watch a master of landscape painting, you know you should be watching Bob Ross. He is the guy who knows how to do the thing. I am actually, most of my paintings are not landscapes. I do a lot of portraits. I do a lot of mixed media, oddness. There we go. Now I'm getting, you know what, these trees are a little closer. The trees that are closer, actually, that are really in the foreground, are actually easier to paint, because here they are, right? Have some little trees in the background, but then we've got our big foreground trees. Give a nice bluish black, maybe a purpley. I'll bring a little yellow, make a little brown. So we've got the line right down of the branch here. We've got a line of the trunk and some of the branches coming off. Make it thin. If I had a teeny tiny brush, that would be perfect for the branches that come off. But I will just have to work with what I have. So using that blue, some branches coming off, blue for the line of my tree, and then I can go back and kind of show, okay, here's some shadows here. And bring that green back in, less shadowy part of my tree. Maybe using an even larger brush for this part, I think. Using all the brushes that I can figure out how to use. we go. Maybe making this a little bit more like a watercolor painting and less like an acrylic painting, I think is probably the key. Doing it more impressionistic and less, I don't know, trying to be realistic. I'm certainly not succeeding in realism, that's for sure, but that's okay, because, you know, that's not my jam, you know? And as I said, I definitely don't do a lot of landscape paintings. I do them every once in a while. I actually tend to do more landscape drawings than paintings. So I'd probably be doing this a lot better in oil pastels than in watered down acrylic paint. So maybe I should do a video of that. And I feel like we need some more green in here, and I feel like this technique is a lot more effective. Seems to be working a lot better, where I'm kind of laying in, down, and across. I feel like that's the better technique. Yeah, sometimes you just have to worry. And you know what? I'm not going to go back and undo this because it has its own personality. It has its own thing. And it, you know, it is what it is. I'm just going to add more and just find what works and just keep going with it, right? Right. Okay, so finally, let's get the shrubs in the front. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to our green because it's brighter. And I'm going to lay in shrubs, lovely green. Some nice, shadows and highlights also in there. Oh, that's too shadowed, but that's okay. No, actually, you know what? This should be here because right under the trees there is kind of a shadow where the trees are, between the bottom of the trees and the grass of the shrubs. So yeah, perfect. There should be a nice dark shadow here. So we'll put that in. Yeah, this is me figuring it out, making it up as I go along, because that's a lot of what art is too, is figuring it out. Okay, so, all right, there's the shadows, and we're gonna go next and finally to the shrubbery part, where I kind of lay this in. This is what's the absolute closest. There's some grass and some trees, and what I'm probably going to do is, I mean, this is all pretty impressionistic, but I do want to show that because this is the foreground, it is what has the most detail. So I know that there's one tree that kind of grows right here, and that's going to be like the, here we go, get that. I've got a tree here, and then I think there was a tree there, and I believe there was like a little bit of highlight on one side of the trunk of that tree, so I can put in that highlight. Also on one side of the trunk of that tree if I can, and then lay down some very light branches across it. Yeah, I need one of those fan brushes, right? You can put some shadows behind it. to say my foreground and my middle ground are not as distinct as I wish they would be. I think what I have to do is do one more video where I come back after all this dries and come back with a small brush and actually add some details. So that's what I am going to do so that I can differentiate my middle ground from my foreground.